so we have L1 cache followed by L2 cache. So this is the tag array and this is the data array. So now there are two positions this can be stored. Let's assume that this is a direct map cache. We'll see if you don't understand this, it's okay. And we'll say this is a two-way associative cache. So this is a two-way associative cache. So this is L2 is a two-way associative cache. And this is a direct map cache. So when the CPU generates an address, initially, it is, let's say it's some, let's assume that it's say 8-bit address. And let's say the block size here, block size of this is 2 bytes or maybe 4 bytes. And the block size of this need not be 4 bytes, but let's say this is also 4 bytes. So now when the CPU generates an address, it's an 8-bit address. So now you have to, so when this 8-bit address is generated, so when the CPU generates an address, now the first access will be the L1 cache. So L1 cache is accessed. So to access the L1 cache, all right, so you have to split up this 8-bit address. Now, how will you split up this address? What will be the first split that you will do? Is the first split is this, right? So this is the offset. So how many bits will be there in the offset? So this is the offset. So how many bits will be there in the offset? Yeah, any answer is fine. How many bits are there in the offset?
2.
2 bits, right? Because the block size is 4 bytes. So you can see that the block size is 4 bytes, which means that, let's say this is a block, cache block, and there are 4 bytes. So this is the first byte, 0th byte, first byte, second byte, and third byte. There are 4 bytes. So differentiate between these 4 bytes, you need 2 bits, right? The 00 will be this byte, 01 will be this byte, 10 will be this byte, and 11 will be the other byte. So now there are 2 bits in the offset. Let's say the address was 00. And then you are saying it's a direct mapped cache. How many bits will be there here? And this is the index now. So how many bits will be there in the index? How many bits are there in the index? Or do you think that the index is not there?
Log of cache size minus offset.
No, there will be no minus offset at all. Like, what is the index telling you? Okay. So the question is, so you have to ask, what is the index telling me? So my question is, yeah, what is the index telling me?
Which set it belongs to?
Which set it belongs to, right? Which set I have to search in. Search or place in, right?
And here you have 2 options.
Yeah, here I have 2 options. Because it's a direct map cache, I have 2 options. So this is set 0 and this is set 1. So I have 2 options. So which means that I need a single bit here. I have 1 bit here, either 1 or 0, for the index. If it was a fully associative cache, if it instead of this being, let's say instead of this being direct map cache, if it was fully associative, right? Let's say it was fully associative. Then how many bits would you have needed in the index bit? 0, right? Why? Because this entire cache is a single set. This entire cache is a single set. So the one thing that I have to ask is which set I have to search in. So to find the number of bits in the index, I have to ask how many sets are there in the cache. So I ask how many sets are there in the cache. So the number of sets in the cache is cache size divided by block size into associativity. That will give me, how many sets are there in the cache? It is cache size, right, divided by block size. Right. So this will actually tell me the number of blocks in the cache. Right? This will tell me number of blocks in the cache. Cache size divided by block size will give me the number of blocks. If there are 128 bytes in the cache and I make 64-byte block, the number of blocks are 2. Right? So if I have 128-byte cache block size is 64 bytes. The number of blocks is 2. So this is giving me number of blocks, but I want number of sets. Now I ask how many blocks are there in the set, right? So that is given by the associativity. So now let's say I am clubbing these two blocks to make one set. So then I have to divide this 2 by 2 to get the number of sets. Let's assume a different scenario where this was something like this. Let's say it was 32 byte block cache. Right? The number of blocks is 128 byte cache size divided by 32. So the number of blocks is 4. And let's say it was a two-way associative cache, which means that I'm clubbing two blocks together to make a set. I'm clubbing two blocks together to make a set. Right? So how many sets are there? Number of sets is equal to number of blocks divided by how many blocks you are clubbing to make a particular set. So this is the associativity. So now I am clubbing 2, so it's 4 by 2. So there are number of sets is 2. Did you understand this?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So now here I am saying it's a direct map cache, which means that every block, what do I mean by a direct map cache? Every block is a set in itself. So now there are two blocks here. So which means that, see, there are two blocks, one block and second block, there are two blocks. So which means that there are two sets. So I have to differentiate between the sets. So I have to differentiate between set 0 and set 1, which means that I need actually, I need 1 bit. Using that 1 bit, I will say if it is 0, then I will, this is the set I'm talking about. If it is 1, this is the set I'm talking about. So I have index bit 1. So now let's say it was 1, it was, let's say 0 again. And the remaining whatever is the tag. So number of bits in the tag is 5 bits. I am not worried what this is. Let's say it was 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, something like this. So let's say this was the CPU that generated by the CPU. Now, what do? I know that this is this bit I have got. So the first thing that you will do is you will use the index bit. You will first use the index bit, go and search in the particular set. So now where is the index bit? The index bit is 0. So I will go and search in this particular set. Right? So I will go and map to this particular set. Once I am in this set, right? So once I am in this set, I will use the tag bits to compare with the tag bits here. So I will ask, are these two values same? So I will ask, are these two values same? If they are same, let's say I had 0, 0, 0, 1, 1 here, right? If I had 0, 0, 0, 1, 1 here, then I will use the offset bit to read the byte that I asked for. So this is the 0th byte that I'm asking for and send it to the CPU. This is called a cache hit. So I am using, so first, when you get an address, the split happens. You split it into tag, index, and offset. You use the index bits to go to a particular set. If the index bits are 0, then you search in the entire cache. But if the index bit is something, then you go to that particular set and search all the tags in that particular set for the match for the tag. So now you say, okay, is this matching here or not? Since it is matching, I use the offset and read the byte that the CPU is asking for and send it to the CPU back. Okay. Now my question is, since I am assuming, so are there any doubts here till now, till L1 cache, is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now can there be a scenario where I can have something like this?
When the index bit is 1.
Yes, right. So I can search it. Yeah, so will you search in both now? So now both have the same tag. Can such a scenario exist? So how many of you think such a scenario cannot exist, and how many of you think such a scenario does not exist? Does somebody think that it cannot happen?
Yes, sir. If it's already there in the cache, why would you put it in again?
No, right. Okay. Any other answer?
Sir,
The
index
index
bit can change, so
can
it
happen.
might happen.
What?
It can happen, sir, because of the index bit. If the index
Yes,
bit is
right.
1,
So
then
these two are two different addresses. So you should not forget that this is a different address. This is a different address. So what is this address? Let's say, okay, let's see the address, right? What is this address? This address is 00011, then followed by 0 and some byte, right? And what is this address? This address is, okay, maybe I'll write it down. Right. If you see this address, right, this 0011, this address is 00011 and the set bit is 0. So it is 0 followed by some of XX, so which means that it can be either 0 or 1, some byte offset. What is this address? This address is 00011, but what is the bit here?
1.
1, right? So these two are two different addresses. They are not the same address. So this block is completely different from this block, even though the tag is the same. Why is this happening? Because you are not storing this index bit here anymore.
Yes, sir.
Is this clear? Can you answer till now if it is clear? Till L1 cache, if it is clear, we'll go to the L2 cache. If it is not clear, you will have to speak out because this is the last opportunity you will have to learn. Yeah, for two people who are just clicking no, you will have to say what you are not understanding, or else we'll go forward. Okay, okay. Majority of you have understood. Okay. So now I search here, but let's say I didn't have 0011 here. So let's say I didn't have 0011 here. Maybe it was say 10011 and maybe this was 00011, right? This was still a miss because my index bit is 0, right? So it was still a miss. So I did not find that 0011 in the set I am searching for. I am only searching in this particular set. So in this set I am searching for, I did not find this tag. So now what do I do? What do I do now?
Search in L2.
Yeah, search in L2, right? So now I go to L2. Okay. So now I search in L2. So now I have the same address. So the same address is being sent. So I didn't find it. So now the system has come here. It is in L2 cache. So now I have the same address. Now I have to split again, right? Because the organization of the L2 is completely different from L1, which means that I cannot use the same index bits. I cannot use the same offset bits. I cannot use the same tag to search in L2. I have to split again. Now, what is the offset for this? There are 4 bytes in this also, 2, right? So there are 4 bytes. So the offset is 2, right? So now I will get offset as 2, right? Now, how many bits are there in the index? How many bits are there? Yes, 1. Why is it 1?
Because you still have 2 sets.
Yes, right. So now you are saying it's a two-way associative cache. It's a two-way associative cache, right? So it's a two-way associative cache. The number of blocks in L2, the number of blocks in L2 are 4, right? You can see that the number of blocks in L2 are 4, but you are clubbing 2 blocks together to make a set. So this is one set, this is another set. So you are clubbing 2 blocks together to make a set. You are not actually merging the data. You are just saying that these 2 blocks are now referred to as set 0. These 2 blocks are now referred to as set 0. These 2 blocks are referred to as set 1. Right. So now what you are saying is this: you are saying that this is set 0. Right? This entire thing is set 0, and this is set 1. So you need 1 bit again. You need 1 bit again in the index. It could have been some other number of bits. It's not same as the L1 cache. So you have index bit as 1, so this is 0, and the remaining bits are again tagged, so it is 0, 0, 0, 1, 1. Okay. Now you are searching in L2. Now what do? I use the index bit. I use the index bit to go to the particular set. Now it is saying 0, so I go to set 0. Now it is bit different from L1. You search whether this 00011 is there here or here. It can be either here or here. Right. So now can you tell me, can such a scenario exist? Can this have something like this?
No, sir, this can't happen.
This can't happen, right? Because there cannot be duplicate copies of the data. So this scenario cannot exist. So which means that you will find, if you find 00011, you will find either here or here. Of course, this can be 00011, but I am not going into it. I am only searching in set 0 because that is what my index bits are telling me. So I use the index bit, to search in the particular set. So now I searched here. Let's say I found that it is there in 00011. Then what do? I use the offset bit to read the byte that I am reading and send it back to the CPU or to the next level cache or whatever it is, right? So that we are not worried about now as of now. Is this clear?
Yes.
Okay. So if this 0011 was not there, if this, let's say assume that this 0011 was not there, right? Maybe it was again 11100 and 101, something like this. So now you use the index bit to search in this entire set. There were two sets, two blocks in the set. You search whether this is same and this is same. None of them were same. It means that this is again a cache miss. So you say that I want the particular block from the main memory. Now I want a block which has 4 bytes from the main memory, because this is the address that I will be sending. I don't want just to fetch only a single byte, because my block size is say 4 bytes. I don't want to fetch only 1 byte. So I will send this particular address saying that, okay, this is what I want. From this, I want 4 bytes. From this, I want 4 bytes means what? I want a block which is of this address. So I want an address block which has the address something like this. I should have 000111000, and then the same address 01, and then 10, and then, so I want a block which is having these 4 bytes. So this is what I send. So you can see that the first 6 bits are common. The only 2 bits change because of the 4 bytes that you are talking about. So I send it to the main memory. In the main memory, let's say, okay, the main memory will say, okay, I have this block for you. Now what do you want to do? So now this main memory sends you back this block here. Now the main memory brings this block to the L2 cache. Okay. Now what should I do? Now I have brought this block into the L2 cache, and you know that the block address is something like this. The block address is 00011 and 0. So this is the block address.
Look into address index.
Yeah, right. So now you will have to see. Okay. Oh, okay. Before that, did everybody follow till here? Can you answer? Till here. Forget about bringing the block, but at least till the misses, did you follow? Okay. See, if you are not following, please ask me. I am ready to repeat any number of times. It does not matter to me. I can keep teaching all my days. So you can ask me any number of times. It is okay. These things are, as I said, new to you. Generally, if you are exposed to programming, it is a different thing. So data structures, teaching data structures is different from teaching this, because this is completely new to you. I'm assuming it's completely new to you, right? But once you understand this, you will say that this is nothing. Data structure is more complex. The curve will always be there. First, initially, people will feel that our organization is really tough, but once they understand, they will always feel that there is nothing. I mean, I can build my own system. So now I bring this particular block to the L2 cache. Okay. So now I have brought this block. I have to keep this block somewhere. I have to keep it either here, here. I have to keep it either here, 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 or here. Right? So I have brought this block. I have to keep it in the 4 locations. But in which location should I keep it? For that, I have to see what is the index bit, or which set this particular block belongs to. What set does this block belong to? And this particular block belongs to set 0 because the index bit is telling me 0. So this block belongs to set 0. So this block can be either kept here or here. So I can keep the block either here or here, right? So that is what now I will be doing. So I want to keep the block in this set. I can keep it here or here. Now the question is, will I keep it here or will I keep it here? So that's the question that we were trying to answer before, right?
And I think it is dependent upon the replacement policy. Right?
Yes, it is dependent on the replacement policy. Now the question is, you have brought this block here, you have brought this block here. I want to keep it either here or here. I don't know where to keep it. Of course, now if I keep it here, I have to remove this block. If I keep it here, I have to remove this block, right? So now I have to choose a candidate for replacement, because you know that now I am replacing a block. So I have to choose a replacement candidate. So to choose a replacement candidate, there is a replacement policy. So I will consult the replacement policy for L2 cache. You can have different replacement policies for different caches. So now you're asking the L2 cache controller, what is the replacement policy you have? Should I keep my block here or should I keep my block here? Now the cache controller will see, okay, this guy is asking me to replace some block. I will see maybe I am implementing a least recently used policy and maybe this block hasn't been used by the CPU at all at any given point of time. So I will tell the controller to write this block here. So now you have picked a candidate. You have picked a candidate on which this block can be placed on. So you picked a candidate on which this block can be placed on. So now the replacement happens. So now what do? You remove this block. You may either write it back to the main memory or not. Let's not worry about it. If you remove the block, you will have to write it back to the main memory at certain cases, but as of now, we will not worry about it. So you remove this block, which means that you reset this tag, you remove the data, and then you say, okay, now I am keeping this block. So what will you write here? You will say 000011, right? That's the one that you came up with. And you write this data, whatever this data was there, you write it here. So now you have filled the cache. Right? And then you send this particular block again to the L1 cache. In the L1 cache, there is no replacement policy needed because set 0, whatever was there, you will have to replace. So you will replace this particular block with 00011 and you will write the new data here. And then you will supply whatever this offset was. Of course, this doesn't happen this way because there's no point in me waiting for the cache to be updated and then sending to the CPU. But for your understanding, this is more than enough if you understand. So what am I doing? When I'll repeat it again, when the CPU generates an address, I will split the address into tag, index, and offset. I will use the index to go to a particular set, and then I will use the tag to search in all the blocks in that particular set. If there is a hit, I will use the offset and read the byte and send it to the CPU. If it is a miss, then I will send the block address to the next level cache, and then there I will use the index bit to read a particular set. If it is and then I go to the particular set, and then I will use the tag bits to search in the set. If it's a hit, I will read that block and send it to the next higher level, whichever was requesting. If it is a miss, then I go to the main memory. In the main memory, I fetch the block. Once I fetch the block, I know that I have brought this address, so which means that I have to keep it in the. I have to keep this block somewhere. So I will consult the replacement policy of this particular set because the set is saying 0, so I am in set 0. I can either keep the block here or here, so I will use the replacement policy. The cache controller will say maybe maybe it's implementing a random replacement policy. It says kick out this block. So now this block, whatever was there, I remove and keep either write it back to the main memory or not. If it is dirty, I will write it. If it's not dirty, I will not write it. And then I will update the contents of this particular way with this block. So now this block is filled up here. The journey has not yet complete because the CPU is still waiting for the data it requested for. What did the CPU request for? This CPU requested for this byte, so that you should not forget. The CPU has requested for this byte, this particular byte, right? So now I kept the block here. So then I send the block back, this entire block to the L1 cache. So the L1 cache, there is no replacement policy because there's only one block per set because it's a direct mapped cache. If it was a fully associative cache, again replacement policy would have come into play. But now I replace this block, I kick out this block, whatever was there, I'm not worried what is there. If it was dirty data, I would have written into L2 cache. Now I replace this with the data here, right? And then I read this byte and give it back to the CPU. So this is the journey of an address that has been generated at the CPU, which goes through multiple levels of cache, goes to the main memory, and then gets the data. So today's world, it is much more complex than this because there are multiple cores. There is a network on chip, which means that whatever networking you know about Ethernet and routing policies and all those are built into the chip itself, inside the chip. So there's a network on chip that is running across. So there will be a packet that will be sent across the network, across the routers, which are all these not routers of the routers kind you know about. You know that there are routers that you use, right? There are physical routers. Inside the chip, there are routers these days. So in those routers, the packet will be forwarded, the address will go somewhere, they fetch the data, keep it in the cache, then next level cache, then to the CPU, right? So this is an entire journey of the address that has been generated by the CPU. And if it was a load, in more often than not, if there is a chance that the pipeline is waiting forever for this data to come, which means that the pipeline has not progressed, which means that the stalls are there. It means that if the stalls are there, the performance has drastically reduced. That's why memory component is an important thing in architecture. Is it somewhat clear? If you have doubts, feel free to ask me. Yeah, can you answer the poll? Okay, the majority of you have understood. If you're still not understanding, feel free to call me. Talk to me. I can explain that further. But are you sure that there are no doubts in this at least in this journey? You might not understand inclusive, exclusive caches. Once you understand this, once you start thinking about it, you'll come up with the same thing. You'll ask, where should I keep the block here, or only keep it here, or keep it in both the places? These are the questions that we were discussing. So once you go back and listen to those lectures, I think you will get an idea of it. But this is the general idea. Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So if it is clear, please don't tell the answer now. I think I posted the tutorial. Right? So let's go to the tutorial itself. Yeah, please solve the tutorial questions. For some reason. Just a second, my sisters. Okay, so let's do this problem. Please do it. Yeah, can you do this fourth question? It will take some time, but it's okay. Take pen and paper and write if you haven't done it. Please try doing this problem. Okay, this might take some time. Okay, can you please do the third problem? We'll come back to the fourth problem a bit later. Can you do the third problem? I just want to know whether you are understanding it or not. Just the third problem. The third problem is simpler. We already saw this. Can you tell me quickly what's the answer for the third problem? Okay, were you able to do it? The third problem. So how many bits are there in the byte offset? How many bits are there in the byte offset?
4, sir.
4, right? Because it is 16 bytes. So there are 16 bytes. So you have to differentiate between each of the byte because it's a byte addressable memory. So you need 4 bits. So offset is 4 bits. How many bits are there in the index field? How how many bits are there in index B? Come on, it should not take you so much time.
13.
Yeah, how did you get 13? See, how many bits? Okay, I can't write it here. Just- Okay, so now you have 128 kilobytes, right? So 128 kilobytes is the cache size. Right, block size is 16 bytes. Right, so the number of blocks is equal to cache size divided by block size. So what is the cache size? It is 2 power 7 right, into 2 power 10 divided by the block size, that is 2 power 4. So it is 17 minus 4 is 2 power 13. Right? So the number of blocks is 13, right? Because it's base 2. The number of blocks is, sorry. What am I saying?
Yes,
sorry,
sir,
number of
blocks is 13.
No, not number of blocks is 13. Number of blocks is 2 power 13. So the number of blocks is 2 power 13. And the number of sets also, because it's a direct map cache, the number of sets is equal to the number of blocks. So it is 2 power 13. So the number of sets is 2 power 13. So how many bits do you need to differentiate between the 2 power 13 sets? You need 13 bits. Right?
13
So
numbers.
13 bits are needed. It's like asking the question, if it was 4 bytes, how many bits do I need? It's 2 bits. So why did you get it? It's because 4 is 2 power 2, right? And if it is 8, I need 3 bits because it's 2 power 3, right? So if I ask you how many bits do I need for a 2 power 3 number of sets were there, then I need 3 bits. Now I'm asking 2 power 13 sets are there, 13 bits are needed. So I know that the 13 bits are needed here, and offset is 16 bits, 16 bytes, offset is 4. So now it is 13. So the number of bits in the tag is equal to the address. It's a 32-bit address. So tag is equal to address minus index minus offset. So the tag, number of bits in tag is 32 minus 13 minus 4. Is this okay? Is everybody following this?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so we'll switch gears. We'll see about the project, since I think some of you are, I don't know whether I can do this here. Let's see. Can we do this? Just give me a second. Yeah, this one is not possible. What we do is this way. Okay, so let's start writing it so that it's easier. Okay, so the project was to simulate a cache, right? So that's what we started doing. We said we'll simulate a cache. So now I don't know whether you have started doing it or not. Just give me a second. Huh. Yeah, so I don't know how many of you have started doing this. So let's say you want to design a cache, right? So now you understand there are components in the cache. Is it recording? Okay. So now, what are the components in the cache? So we know that the components in the cache are sets, blocks. So these are the components. So if I have a cache, how does the hierarchy look like? The entire cache has sets, and each set will have blocks. So I have a cache. In that cache, there are sets, and in the sets, there are blocks. Right? So what should I do if I am programming this? I will, and you know that this is all just software, right? So I can do whatever I want. So I will say there is a class which is which is dividing me a block, right? So I have a cache which says block, right? So I say okay, the dash is block. I have a cache, so I have a class which is saying which is telling me what is the block, and what should I have in a particular block. What's the component of a block? Can anybody tell me? It's okay.
Sets.
No, right? Block doesn't have sets. What does block have?
Bytes.
The data and time.
Yeah. So do you need the data because you're just simulating? Do you need the data? Okay. For
You-
now.
If you don't want to show it.
Yeah. Okay, let's assume that there is data, right? So let's say assume that. But we'll talk about this again. Let's assume that there is this data. So let's assume that it's a 64 or whatever, right? Some amount of data. We can change this later. Right? Or maybe if you are not comfortable with this, let's have this as character data, and this is equal to the block size, whatever the block size is. We'll come back to this later, but don't worry about the data. Now, what else does it have? You're forgetting one important thing. What does a block have? If I have a
Tag.
Yeah, address, right? So I have an address tag. So I have tag and address. So this is part of a block. Okay. So we come back to now block again. Now I want to define a set. Right? Of course, this is the wrong way to define block. Now I define set. What does a set have?
Blocks.
Yes, right. So I have blocks. This I think for you are agreeing, right? So I have blocks. So I have blocks, but I don't know how many blocks this set will have, which means that I should be able to dynamically create any number, because one level of cache might have only one block in a set if it was a direct map cache. If it was a 4-way associative cache, maybe I might have 4 blocks in the thing, right? So it might be any number of blocks. So I will just create the class that I have already created. I will say, okay, this is blocks. So each set is holding a pointer to the blocks. Okay. Is this okay? Is it okay till now? Is everybody following till now? If you are not following, please stop and ask me. But we are just designing a cache. This is not the only way to design it. You might have already designed it in a different way, but this is just that I know. I mean, I have coded this, so that's why I have some idea about this. But if you are not following this, please ask me. I can explain it. You can also do it in a different way. So all I am saying is a cache will have few number of sets. Like the example that you saw, right? Like if you remember the L2 cache we saw, it saw that it had 2 sets. Each set had 2 blocks in it, right? So the L2 cache had 2 sets. Each set had 2 blocks in it. So that's the way I am just coding it. I'm just using Hooke's concept to code the same way I am doing. So I have created an object which is of cache, I have created a class which is type block, and I have created a class which is of type set, and then I'm saying, okay, this is a set will hold blocks, and what else should it hold? Now, what else should it hold?
Set index.
No, right? I need not have the set index because I will not store the set index anywhere. If you remember the hardware, you are not storing the set index anywhere. I will also store how many sets are there, how many blocks are there in the number of blocks, right? So number of blocks in set. Right, I will just show, okay, these are the number of blocks in this set. Okay, so I just said, okay, there is this class. So we'll come back to it again. I mean, it's okay. We'll build it as we go forward. So I have a class called block. I have a class called set. I have a class called cache. Now, what does this cache have?
Sets.
Sets, right? So it's so set I have. And what else does it have? What else does it have? You can just see the top one.
How
and the
many?
answer.
How many?
How many sets? How many sets are there in the cache, right? Is this okay? So I am not doing anything else. I just said this is the way it should be, and I haven't added anything. All I am saying is that I have cache that I have designed, and the cache has sets. The sets has blocks. That's all I have done till now. Is this okay?
Yes.
Okay. So now let's go to the main program. I want to define. Let's say I want to define the cache, right? So I want to define a cache, right? So now what do? I say cache, maybe L1 cache. This is the cache that I am defining. So I say L1 cache. Okay. So now I know that I have got a cache. Now what should I do?
The size of the cache.
Yes, right. So now I find out how many sets are there in the cache. So maybe the user said that the cache size is example. Cache size is say 128 kilobyte. Block size is 32 kilo. Let's keep it simple. 128 bytes. Block size is 32 bytes. How many sets are there here? And he also said that it's a direct map here. How many sets are there here now? It's a 128 byte block cache size. Block size is 32 bytes. It's a direct map cache. How many sets are there?
4 sets.
4 sets, right? So I don't know why people are not answering this. We are being repeating. Unless you take a pen and paper and solve it, you will not follow it. See, the number of bytes in the cache is 128. The block size is 32 bytes. So you find out the number of blocks. The number of blocks is 4. Since it's a direct map cache, each block is a set. So the number of sets is 4. So I found out that number of sets is equal to 4. So now in my program, what should I do? So I found out. So I write some code here to find out the number of sets for this L1 cache. So I write code here. I write code here to find the number of blocks for L1 cache. Okay. So now what do I do?
And now you initialize your cache.
Yes, right.
before
So I say, yeah. So I say L1 cache dot num sets, right? Num sets in cache is what? 4. Of course, I should not be doing this. I just declare it as public. If you are really interested in software engineering, you should have this as a private variable. You should have a set function and a get function. I'm just writing in brute force way. This is really a bad practice to write it this way. You should have it declared as a private variable. You should have a member function to get and set things. I hope you already know that. Like if you're writing good software, you should not be writing directly setting this in the way I'm doing it. It's just for your understanding I'm doing it. Okay, so now I have set the number of sets in the cache as 4. Now what should I do? Can anybody tell me what should I do?
you can decide how to allocate memory for the caches, maybe an array or something.
No, right? So I already have a pointer to sets. So now I have to initialize the sets, right? So I have to say, okay, create number. So now I know I have set the number of sets in cache, but this will not magically create the sets, right? This will not magically create the sets. So I have to create 4 sets, right? So what should I do? So I should say L1 cache dot sets, right? This is what I'm doing, right? L1 cache dot sets Is this okay?
Yes, sir.
Now what should I write here?
Malloc.
Okay, C plus new what?
New set.
Sets.
Yeah, new set followed by
Four.
L1 cache dot num sets in cache, right? So I have created 4 sets and attached it to this particular variable. Is everybody following?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now I have created the number of sets. Now what do I do?
For each set, you allocate blocks.
Yeah, for each set, create how many blocks? So how many blocks are there in this L1 cache?
1 block per set.
1 blocks per set, right? So create 1 block. So how do I do this? I say for so I go to the each set. So I say L1 cache dot sets of I dot number of blocks in the set. Right? I already figured out that there's only 1 block in the set, and then I do L1 cache dot sets of I dot blocks is equal to what? New, right? Block. And in this case, it's 1, so I just write that on directly. Now I have a beautiful cache with me, and it is running perfectly fine, right? So I have a cache which has its own sets and its own blocks. So this is, I am done with this. I mean, actually I have designed a cache as simple as this. So I have designed a cache, but now we have to add more functions to this because this is not doing anything. This is not, I don't know what's the tag, I don't know what's the address, I don't know anything of that sort, right? So now what, okay, first let me ask, did you understand till here? Yes, we have to have a dirty bit in a block. I mean, I'm just building as and when we want to go, so it's not like it's complete. So did you understand till now, the coding part, did you understand? Okay. So majority of you seem to have understood it. Okay. Okay. So now we will come back to where we left off. We said, okay, what else this block should have, right? I am interested in what else the block should have. I should know if I have to replace something, I should have per block, what should I keep? I am keeping the tag, and somebody said dirty bit. Okay, I'll keep the dirty bit. Maybe you want to implement some replacement policy. Maybe you want to implement a LRU replacement policy. So I have say LRU bits, right? So I will say int LRU. So I have int LRU bits, right? Okay. Okay, I am assuming it's clear. If it's not clear, again, please let me know. So I initialized everything. So whenever this class is called, I'm setting the tag to -1. The dirty is false. The LR is 0. Maybe I want to have one more bit called valid because I don't know whether it's valid or not. So I can have valid here. But it's up to you. I mean, whatever you want to code it here. So it's okay. So I say it's initially invalid data here. So there's nothing here. So it's invalid data here. Okay. So now I have this block. Okay. Now I want to come to the cache. Let's say I come to the cache. What is the first function that you will code in cache? You have the cache.
Map.
Not map, right? So
Fit.
what is
When you want to add some data to the cache.
Yeah, so either insert or the initial is to access, right?
Yes, sir, to search.
Yeah, to search, yes. So I want to search in the cache, right? So I want to have an access in the cache. So with what will I access? With what will I
Address.
access? Yes, address was it. So I should get the address. So I am accessing with the address. So now so think like a CPU. Now I have got the address. So that is the ADDR. What should I do? What was I telling you previously? What was I doing when I got an address?
Check index bit.
Yes, I first find what is the set, right? So if you remember, I had an address. I split it into tag, index, and offset. I use the index bits. To go to a particular set. So which means that I should say maybe this is my set. Extract set index. Exact set index with the address. And I should have that function here. I don't know how you will write this function. It's up to you how you will write this function, right? So you have to write this function. Maybe you have to do some kind of bit manipulation or whatever. So this function should already be there, right? Which will return me so if given an address, this is giving me a set index. So now I have got the set, right? Now what should I do? So now I'm trying to access, I got the set index. So now I use the set index to go to a particular, set. Now in this set, what should I do?
Check for the tag.
Yes, right. So I search for the tag. So how do I search for the tag?
You discard the index and
Block
offset
array.
part of the address, and then
Yes, right. So you, I mean, you can do. Okay. So let's do this. Okay. So now I want to find the block. Okay. So now I have this set. So I want to get the block.
so your set has an array of blocks, right?
Yes.
So
So that's
you
why
just
yeah.
the tag and you search through that array.
So I'm getting the block, and then I'm using the whatever that sets has, because I already have the sets. I got the set index, right? And in that set, I will say find my block. So what am I doing here? I am saying this particular cache has sets. So I am calling that sets function and going to that particular set and calling the find block function. So which means that this guy should have a find block function here. Right. Yeah, it might not be clear initially, but just think about it. If it is clear for everybody, I'll go forward. If you have questions, you can ask me. Of course, again, this is one way to do it, but I'm just building it so that you get an idea of what is happening in the system. Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now I'm writing the find block function in the set class. How do I write it? I have to return back block pointer. Right? So I have a find block. Forget about the addressing and all. So don't worry about the splits and things like that. We'll come back to it as in. So it can, see, Rome cannot be built in a single day, right? So it takes some time for you to figure out what is happening. So let's go step by step. That's why I'm coding it live, so that it's going step by step and we are figuring it out together. So now I have a find block function. Okay, I have got the address. Now where should I search? So now you had used the set index to go to the particular set. So now what was happening? So you said I want to access this particular address. So somewhere in the CPU, let's say the main function was the CPU. Somewhere in the CPU in the main function you said L1 cache, right? Dot access, and I gave some address. So this is the CPU that has generated this. So the CPU has said, this is the cache. I want to access this particular address. CPU is not worried about anything else. It is not worried about the underlying complexity or underlying hierarchy that is there in the cache. So it has just said that L1 cache dot access as the address. So it is just giving some address, coming up with some address. It is saying L1 cache dot access address. So now I have come here, I have the address with me. So I get once the CPU has generated the address, what do? I split it to tag, index, and offset. Of course, the split is not showing here. I am just extracting the set bit. What is the set that I have to search for? So I have got the set that I have to search for in. So I got the set that I have to search for in. And now I will go to the particular set. So how do I go to the particular set? This cache has number of sets, right? So we already agreed that the cache has sets. So I go to this particular set. So how do I go to this particular set? You can see that this is the particular set that I'm talking about, right? This is the particular set. The sets of set number will give me the particular set, right? Okay. So maybe this I should not be right. So this is the set number. Right. So I am going to that particular set. In that set, what am I trying to find? I am trying to find the block. So that's why I am calling a function called find block. Right. So, and in this set, I am having a find block function. Is this clear till now? Are you following till now?
Yes.
Can you answer the poll? Yeah, don't get overwhelmed. You might not understand everything. You might have to spend some more time, maybe listen to the video again or things like that. But the idea is clear. So when you get an address, you split the address into index, tag, and tag, index, and offset. You use the index bit to go to a particular set. So that's what I am just coding the way I am speaking, right? So I am not. The reason I'm coding it this way is because it's easier for you to follow. This is not the only way to code it. I'm just making sure that you are following what I'm saying. If you are not following, please ask me. There is, as I said, don't feel shy. Right? We have already spent like almost 50 hours together, I guess. So don't feel shy. We can always, I can explain again. So now the CPU, let's say this is the CPU, right? CPU generated the address. CPU generated this address. I said, I have L1 cache. I said access this address, right? So once I said this access this address, I came to this access address. I find out what is the set that I have to access. So this is the set that I have to access. So I use sets of set number, which means that I go to the particular set because this cache has maybe two sets, right? The cache has maybe two sets. So now maybe the set number was 1. So I go to that set number 1 set and say, hey, do this, you are a set. Do you have this block or not? Now, what should I do in the find block? What should I do in the find block? So this set has few blocks, right? You can see that this set block. So now what should I do here?
Check, find the tag and then check for it in the blocks.
Yeah, let's say the address itself is a tag. Let's not complicate things. Let's say the address is itself a tag. So where is the address stored? Is the address stored in the set? So where is this particular address stored?
In some particular block.
No, right? You can see that it is stored here, right? So let's call it as address itself for now. We'll make it tag later so that it's easier for you to understand. Forget about address tags. Once you understand this, you can add that same thing later. Okay, so now you are saying find block. So you got the address. You cannot search for whether the set has the address here itself or not, right? So what should I go? What should I? Can you tell me what function? What is the next line I'll be writing?
A for loop.
Yeah, exactly, right. So for int I is equal to 0, right? I less than till where should I go? How many blocks should I set?
Blocks in set.
Set, yes, right. Number of blocks in set, right? And then I plus plus, right? Okay. Now what should I search here?
If address equals to.
Yes, right. So if the search that I am doing, if address is equal to what do I have here? I have blocks, right? So I have blocks here. You can see that I have blocks here, right? So in each of the blocks of that, anyway, I am in the set. So I am only now concentrating on that set, right? I am not going to any other set. I am concentrating only on that set. In each of the blocks in the set, let's say the set had 2 blocks, then I am searching in both of the blocks. So I am searching is does the address present in this, right? Does this have, right? Does it have? And of course, I might have to search whether the block itself is valid or not, but we'll not worry about it for now. So now we say whether it is there or not. If it is there, what should I do?
Return it.
Yes, right. So I return it. So I return this particular block. If I hit, then I return this particular block. If I come here, which means that if I am here, it means that I could not find anything, which means that the block was not found. Right, so I did not find anything. So this is all I have to write for find block function. So this is all that I have to write for an access function, for at least for now. Does this make sense? So what did I do? I created a cache. In the cache, I created sets. In each of the set, I created blocks. Then I said I have a function called access. In that access function, I said, okay, I generate the address. The CPU generates the address. That address is there here. I extract this. I extract the set number. I go to the particular set and say, hey, can you have the block or not? And how do I do it? I go to the particular set here and say, find that block using this address. And I come here in this, I have few blocks in this particular set. Maybe this is set 0. I have few number of blocks. I go through all the blocks. I check whether that address matches with me. If the address matches with me, I return back that block. If the address does not match with any of the blocks I have, I return a null pointer. Okay.
Yes.
I'm still waiting. If somebody has doubt, please feel free to ask me. Yeah, I know that it might be overwhelming initially, but once you understand it, it will be easier. If you have doubts, please feel free to ask me. I can explain again. And again, this is not the only way to do it. Okay. So now I got back the block. I have to send it back to the higher level cache, right? So what do? I said is you found the block. Right? I found the block. So if block is not equal to null pointer, maybe I return back block data. If there was block data, I would have written back block data. But let's say the block data is not there. So I just say whether it's a hit or a miss. So I'm just counting as of now whether it's a hit or a miss. But maybe I think it will be easier for you to understand this. Maybe that's only 1 byte. Let's assume that it's only 1 byte. So I'm just returning a character. So I will just return block data. So this is fine. Because this will not exactly work, so I have to say some character is false and say I'll say. Let's assume this data is a pointer, right? So I will have a character. I mean, these are just sugar coating, but let's assume that this is fine. Okay, so now I'm returning back the block data, and if there's no data, I will return back. But should I do anything else other than here? Should I do anything else here? Do you think I should do anything else? I should do something else. Let me say.
So you should retrieve the data from the main memory if it's not found, right?
Okay, if it is not found, then I'm saying it's not found. It's the headache of the CPU to, let's say it's a headache of the, see, this cache will have to generate, you are saying this cache will have to generate one more access, right? Let's say there's only one cache and there's no main memory. I am just telling the cache whether it's a hit or a miss. Yes, you are right. I should have had an access again. Maybe this should have a pointer to the L2 cache or things like that, but maybe I have it as a separate encoding or whatever. So let's first worry only about one cache, then we build on the second cache. Okay. If I have only one cache and there is no main memory, I'm just worried about whether there's a hit or a miss. What should I do? I have to do one more important thing before.
Change LRU.
Yeah, change LRU, right? Because this is now a hit. If it's a hit, what should I do here?
Update LRU, maybe increase its value.
Yes, right. So I have to update the LRU. So what should I do here? I should say this particular set, right? With this particular set number, I have to move this block, move to LRU. And I have to move to this LRU, this particular block. See, this block was found in the cache, in this particular set. So now I have to move this block to the MR, sorry, move to MRU, right? Because I have to send it to the most recently used position, or I can say I have to update the LRU, right? So I have to send it to the most recently used position, or say, and if it's confusing, let's say update LRU. Right? So I am updating the LRU using this block. And where is this update LRU coded? Here, right?
Insert.
Right? So I have white. And I'm sending a block pointer, right? And I can update the LRU here. How do I update the LRU? I can just do this. If you're not understanding, let's see whether you understand data or not. So I get the LRU value, okay, and I go
So the block pointer should be BLOCK. BLOCK.
block pointer should be okay. Does this make sense?
Yes.
Right. So what I'm just doing this. I'm just incrementing all the counters just once, like whatever you were discussing before, right? I'm just incrementing this. I'm just incrementing these blocks, right? Okay. Are there any questions? We can keep building it this way. So I can just continue building this way. I can just have update LRU, and then let's say now I have access, right? So I can have insert block. I can have things like this. But the idea is clear, right? At least you got some starting point. So I hope you will build on this. Right? You and to let's say I want to I of course have an access, but let's say I want to have insert block. If I have to have insert block, then maybe I will have a void function which says insert block. And this insert block will be called when I bring a block to the CPU from this particular set, right? So I bring it. So then I will have to call the LRU policy, figure out what is this. So this can be just built on and on as functions, but these are all just functions. So you're just simulating the cache. But by doing this, you will understand how it actually works in the CPU also, right? Of course, not exactly the way it works, but more or less it works this way. Okay, I hope this gave you some starting point to do the project. So are there any questions? No, if there are any questions, I can take questions.
Sir, there was like one doubt that I had. Sir, like in beginning to implement memory, we haven't done like 4 separate bytes. We had one integer that is a combine of 4 bytes. So it's like,
yeah. So generally, memory should be implemented using a character. That's very easy because then everything is byte addressable. So everything is character, right?
yeah.
If you do it by integer, it becomes very difficult.
So can we maintain that one word as the smallest unit thing in both memory and cache? Because most of the programs have integers, and if we break it into bytes, then
But it's not simulating it really, right? Because if there's a character in the program, what will you do about it?
So we've only implemented instructions with like integer stuff, only integer arithmetic
Okay,
stuff.
I mean, I'm okay, but just be aware that it's not the right way to do it. I mean,
Yes, sir.
so you, for any cache, that's why I always have character pointers, but it's up to you. I mean, as I said, it's just for your learning that this project is there. But keep in mind that memory cannot be simulated using integer pointer. It doesn't work that way. Okay, are there any other questions?
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, I have a doubt in project phase 2, which I think.
Phase 2. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I solved the problem, but I would just want to know whether
Sure,
that's the
go ahead.
correct one.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I want small help in writing the clock cycle table for 2 sequences of instructions, sir.
I didn't get a clock cycle.
No. You will be drawing the table for the instructions, right?
Yes.
I want you to draw the table for 2 particular sequences of instructions. I have a small doubt with that.
Okay, but I still don't get. Okay, well, let's write and see what you're asking. Maybe I'm not following it. Is it not connected? Yeah, so before that, for one project, please make sure that, please remember that if you're not able to do the project, it is perfectly fine, but just write like what I have written, right? So I am assuming the thought process is what is more, I mean, you are following the thought process, right? So I'm just trying to build the cache. Of course, it was, I mean, I'm just like whatever I'm coming to my mind, I'm just writing the code as it is, right? So I know that I have a cache, I know that I have set side. So if you are able to write that, even if it doesn't execute, it is okay because you have understood the flow, right? Okay, first, what is that you have to do? You have to extract the set. Okay, I extracted the set. And after I extracted the set, what do? I find the block in that. And if I find the block, if it is a hit, what should I do? I have to update the LRU. If it's a miss, then like Aditya said, right? So we have to access the next level of cache. Now, do I code the next level access in the cache itself, or do I return back to the controller and then say the controller will access the next level cache? So these are some of the design decisions that you have to take when you are designing the software. And I expect that when you are building software, you build like good software, right? Like, of course, this was totally a crap software that I built because I had declared everything as public. But you should not do that. Like, you should actually have like member functions and everything should be modular so that it's easier to plug and play. Like by using your code, if I have to design 10 level cache, it should not take me 100. I mean, it should not be equivalent to me writing the entire code again. It should be so modular that I should just be able to call a for loop, declare 10 levels of cache, connect them with each other in the way I want them to connect, and just run the program and it should run. So even if you are not implementing it this way, you should just write your design thought process. Like you should say, okay, this is the way I am thinking that this thing should be. Then, of course, I haven't read your project descriptions, but once I start evaluating, I will actually spend time reading that, right? So, and I can also give you pointers. Okay, this maybe you are going in the wrong direction. This might be in the right direction, so on and so forth. It will also help you, and that will also be considered for evaluation. So, I am not expecting. I'm repeating it again and again. I am not expecting a complete, full-fledged project. No, this is not a software engineering project. So, I'm expecting more of what have you understood and what is your thought process in building up such a system. Okay, so please don't hesitate to submit the assignment. So if you have done something, just write that and submit it, and then they'll anyway be your voice. So I will ask questions and I will figure out whether you understood it or not. Okay. Yeah. You were asking something. One second, I just share the screen. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Let's say there are 2 instructions.
Add
R1, R2, R3.
Okay. Add R1, R3,
R4.
Okay.
And again an add instruction, add R5, R1, R2.
Okay.
So how will this execute with the clock cycles drawn?
Yeah, so you have 2 instructions right now. So this is instruction 1. This is instruction 2. I have instruction fetch, instruction decode, register fetch, execute, memory, and write back. Okay. So this is clock cycle 1. clock cycle 2, clock cycle 3, clock cycle 4, clock cycle 5. Of course, you have more number of clocks that are going around. So this is clock cycle 6, clock cycle 1, clock. Now I have instruction 2. I do instruction fetch, instruction decode, register fetch. Okay. Now I have to execute here, right? So I have to execute. So now the question is whether I can execute here or not, because this instruction decode register fetch might have fetched me a wrong value, because the R1 is yet, there's a dependency here. If you see, there's a dependency here, right? So this is dependent on this. So this is needing that value R1. So now the pipeline register here should give me value there. So I can forward this. So this I can do an execute here, memory here, and right. So by enabling data forwarding, there was no stall. So I was able to execute this instruction. So in 6 clock cycles, I was able to finish these 2 instructions.
So what if there is no operand forwarding?
If there is no operand forwarding, you will have to reissue the instruction decode register fetch again. Because see, if there was no operator, if there was no forwarding, right, then I will have to reissue an instruction decode register fetch again. I have to reissue instruction decode register fetch again here. Sorry, not even here. So I will have to reissue the instruction decode register. So there's a stall here. There's a stall here. At the end of the write back stage, the R1 will be updated. At the end of the write back stage, R1 will be updated. But how do I get the R1? I have to do instruction decode register fetch again. Because the register fetch is clubbed with the instruction decode, I have to register fetch again. Then I have to do execute, memory, and write back. At clock cycle 9, I will wait.
So in this way, the instruction decode register fetch will occur in clock cycle 6.
Yeah, it will occur in clock cycle 3 and clock cycle 6. See, there is no way for you to find out that there is a dependency until you do instruction decode. So
Okay,
you
so
cannot just skip this.
Okay, assuming this configuration,
Uh-huh.
I have 5 instructions, the other sequence. I think this will not work there. I found that there's a bug with that 5 instructions.
So we can do cycle 5 also, right?
Yeah, sorry, here you can do, because you are assuming that the half stage is for writing and the half stage is for, so yeah, there's a optimization in MIPS where the first half of this write back stage, you are writing the register and the register fetch happens in the next half of the clock cycle. But that is just an optimization in MIPS. So if you assume that optimization, this can happen here. But if you don't assume that optimization, that's also fine.
Actually, when that optimization is not assumed, there comes a mistake or a bug with those.
Yeah, can you tell me where that bug is there? I'm also curious.
Okay, I'll tell you the instructions, sir.
Okay.
5 instructions which caused, our processor crashed with those 5 instructions.
Okay, go ahead.
The first one would be load immediate.
Okay, then I don't know how you have coded that, right?
I'll just tell you the.
No, can you tell me where it might have crashed? Why do you think it might have crashed?
Okay, sir, but I think the instructions, only if we see that table, I think it would be clear. Only just 5 instructions.
Okay.
Load immediate 4,0.
Load immediate 4.
The register 4. The register 4.
Okay.
And the next one would be load word R5, some number.
This one?
Yes, sir.
R4 is
no, not R4, something other than. Just not independent. They are independent. And the third one would be an add instruction. That will be depending on R5.
So then I don't think this would make any sense, right? So this is not at all needed actually. Okay, but anyway.
No, so that should be there. The first instruction should be there.
Okay. So what is add?
Add, so let's say R4, R5, R6. And the fourth instruction would be an add instruction. Add again. Add R7, R8, R4. And the fifth instruction, anything of choice, like any subtract or add instruction.
Not dependent.
And R11, R12, R13.
Let's see what happens.
Okay. Now, if we execute these 5 instructions with operand forwarding enabled, there comes a
with operand forwarding enabled.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
If you draw this.
Sir.
Sir, I think, but the compiler notices that R4 is not used anywhere up to the add instruction, right?
Up to the add instruction, yes.
I mean, R4 is again updated in the third instruction.
Yeah, so you're saying you cache this, but anyway,
Yeah.
that will have, yeah, the compiler will be alive only in the next semester, or next to next semester for you. So, yeah.
I think that.
Yeah, you are right, but.
Excuse me. The third instruction shouldn't depend on our thing there. It should depend something like R3, the third add instruction. The destination should be R3. It shouldn't be R4. Okay, now if we draw the table for these instructions with operand forwarding enabled.
So there's a dependency here is what you're saying.
Yes, there is a dependency and there will be a stall in the execute stage.
Okay, let's see. I mean, there's nothing called crash, right? It's just that it might get delayed, that's all. Okay. So let's say instruction 1. I do anyway instruction fetch. So then I do instruction fetch. I do instruction decode. So now the question is, can I do execute? Yes, right. So this anyway I can do 0 plus.
Yes, you can do execute.
Then I can also do memory, right? And then I can also do R9 in I3. I do instruction fetch, instruction decode. Now should I do execute or not?
It should be a stall.
It should be a stall, right? Why? Because you have not yet stall. Here I can do execute, right? I can do, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sorry. So now can I do execute?
Why is that the instruction decode is shifting to that next cycle instead of?
So this is a stall, right? So the stall percolates here. Okay. Yeah. So one thing is.
We will not be knowing whether it's a stall or not in that particular before it's
okay. No. See, this is a timeline view that you are looking at. Okay. It's easier for us to explain. That's why we explain it this way. In hardware, this doesn't happen this way. In hardware, what is happening? You have an instruction fetch hardware unit with a pipeline register here. Okay. You have an instruction decode register fetch with a pipeline register here. You have an execute with a pipeline register here. You have a similarly memory and then a write back. Okay. So now you can see that at this instruction 3 is still, see, instruction 3 has not yet been fetched by the execution unit. So there is I3 still is remaining here. That's what the stall means. Now I cannot overwrite I3 with I4. I cannot say I will overwrite and put I4 here unless this is I3 is plugged out by the execution unit. So if I3 is here, where should I4 be? In which lab I4 should be? Here. So if there's a stall, if the execution unit is not ready to take up I3, the I3 is dormant and sleeping in instruction decode register fetch pipeline register. So I cannot overwrite I4 on I3. So which means that the stall just carries forward, if you think about it that way. So this is a stall here. It is not because I4 is a stall. It is because there was a previous stall in the pipeline register. I cannot push this, whatever I have fetched here, I have fetched instruction 4. Whatever I have fetched, I cannot push it to the register, which is instruction decode register fetch, because instruction decode register fetch itself is busy. It's like I have a guest. I want to push him out to somebody else, maybe to your place. But you already have a guest, so I cannot push my guest to your guest. So it means that my guest is stuck with me for another 1 day extra. And why was your guest stuck? Because maybe that guest is not able to go because maybe he has an appointment in the town and he has to finish that appointment and he is waiting for somebody else there. Because your guest is waiting for an appointment to happen, I cannot push my guest to your house because your house is already full.
But we will not be knowing that there is a stall beforehand.
No, I don't have to know there's a stall. I just have to know that I cannot put I4 here. I don't know. There can be n number of reasons. Maybe this guy is very lazy. Maybe these guys are very lazy. They are not pulling this I3 to I4 to execution unit. Maybe they are just sleeping. I am not. See, I don't have to worry why your guest is not moving out from your house. Your guest might not be moving out of your house because you are in love with. You love that guest and you are keeping him for another 1 or 2 days extra. Or maybe the guest is having an appointment in your city and he wants to finish that job. Or maybe the guest has run out of money and you are trying to procure money for him. Whatever might be the reason, I don't have to know that reason. My only goal is to push my guest to your house. And when can I push my guest to your house? Only your guest goes to the next house, right? Now, does that make sense?
Okay, but
so I don't have to know that I4, there's a stall in the pipeline. No. I just have to know that I cannot write it here because there is already something there already. So these are handled by something called pipeline latches. The control logic.
but in the instruction 3 stall stage, the execute will occur, right? One execute will occur in the stall cycle.
No, here it will not occur. It cannot occur, right? Because this execute is waiting for the right value. It is waiting for the right value, and that right value will be available only here. So your guest is waiting for somebody else to come up with something.
So it beforehand knows that the instruction is not, the register is not fetched.
Yes, right. So because you know that there is a dependency, so the pipeline control logic will figure out that there is dependency. So this will not allow the execute to happen until it gets the right value.
So it first checks the value whether it is available or not, and then
Yes.
executes.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
so
it produces stall.
Yes.
Okay, what I thought was the instruction decode register fetch in the instruction 4 would move to the beforehand clock cycle.
No, that is not possible. That you are not checking anything. You are not allowed to overwrite something. That's all that is there.
Okay, that's what I thought. Because when we move it to the beforehand clock cycle, we will not be able to fetch the I1 instruction or 4. It would be impossible to fetch or like R4, the register R4, if you move it back. That's what I thought.
Okay, I didn't get you. So you're saying this one, if you put it here, what happens?
Yes, sir.
The first is you cannot put it, but even if you put it, okay, you are saying the R4 cannot be fetched. Now, why can't R4 be fetched?
Because in that particular cycle, it will not fetch R4 because it is still being written.
Yeah, then it is a stall because of that reason. Then it will be a stall because of that reason. You should not again crash your system.
But it is operand forwarding enabled, so it need not worry about that. It can completely execute it.
Yeah, then also it will not crash, right?
But the execute stage will move to the memory stage in I3.
Okay, this is wrong. Right, this is wrong. But I'm also curious, like why you are getting stuck. So, but please remember that this is wrong. Okay? You cannot do this. But let's do it. Okay. Let's say this is instruction decode register fetch. Okay.
And then the next one would be like it will do nothing. The instruction decode register fetch will not do nothing. Will do nothing.
Yes. Then execute.
Execute will not occur because it is occurring in the I3.
Yeah, I mean because of the same reason here, right? So then there will be a stall here. And what is this stall called? Why is there a stall here?
Because execute stage is busy with I3.
Yeah, so what is that stall called? We already saw such a hazard. What is that hazard called? What are the different kinds of hazard? There's a data hazard, control hazard. What is the different another hazard?
Memory hazard?
Structural hazard. Structural hazard, right? Which means that you don't have the hardware component available. So this is again a stall. It will not crash. What I'm trying to tell you is whatever you do, whatever business you do, the system will not crash.
Okay, so then the execute will occur in the
next cycle.
But in that stage, execute cannot fetch the value R4.
Why will it not be able to fetch the value of R4? Oh, okay. What you are saying is okay. Then it will fetch it from the. Then there should be some way to fetch it from the register file itself.
So I thought of initializing reissuing a.
Okay. I understand what you have got stuck in. It's interesting. Okay, what you are saying is, yeah, it's an interesting thing, but you can either reissue instruction decode. No. What he is saying is, okay, did you understand what he's trying to do?
So could you recap it?
Okay. Yeah, it's an interesting thing that he has done, but I understand where he's coming from. But please remember, everybody remember, this is wrong. right? Whoever is listening to the video also, this is wrong. This is not allowed. You cannot. If there's a stall, I cannot write anything here. That is very clear. Okay, but just for our curiosity, we have written instruction decode. So now what he is asking is, can I write execute here? Can I write execute here?
Sir, no, right?
No, right? Why? Because I3 is already in execution stage. So I cannot write execute here. So what he has done is he has said, okay, I will make a stall here. Okay, now can I write execute here?
If we write execute, then it will never fetch the value.
Yeah, so what he's saying is this execute is dependent on R4. If I had written execute here, then I could have got this value from here. Now this execute, where will it get value from? It should get it from here.
But that is not R4.
Oh, yeah, this is not R4.
Sir, there is no latch after write back, right?
Yeah, there's no, yeah, that's
You
what
can get it directly from the register, right?
Yeah, he has to get directly from the register. Yeah, that's what I told you.
Sir, but again, you should do IDRF, right?
Yes, I have to do IDRF. Yes. Yes.
But how will it know that it will be waiting? It will be waiting like there will be something that is written above, so we can wait for that.
Yeah, generally there's such a thing. I mean, such a thing does exist. Just a second, somebody came out to my place and open the door and come back. Yeah, sorry about it. Yeah, so were you guys discussing? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so the pipeline will know that you have to fetch it again, and that's the headache of the pipeline. So there are mechanisms to figure that out, but yeah, I mean, it will be very complicated if I teach that.
But in actual processor, this will not happen.
Yeah, in the actual processor, I mean, the actual processor doesn't even implement, no longer implements it this way, because they all are superscalar processors. So there's a different way. I mean, it's a different way that these things are handled. So that's why I mentioned long back. There's something called Tomasulo's algorithm, where you are actually fetching not just one instruction, but you are instead fetching like 4 or 5 instructions, and they have their own register file, and there are queues where they keep on waiting, and there is so what happens is generally you have some certain number of queues. Let's not worry about what are those queues, but you keep instructions into these queues, and all these queues are writing and reading from something called a bus. Okay. So let's say there's one instruction which is waiting for something to be completed in this particular instance. Maybe it is waiting for some instruction. Maybe this is waiting for, let's say, this instruction's completion. Okay. So it will just keep observing this bus. It will see, okay, does this instruction produce anything or not? So by using something called a tag. So every instruction is now tagged. So I know that this instruction is tagged by this particular instruction. So this keeps observing in the bus, on the bus, which is common, which is running across all the queues. It is just observing the bus, whether this particular instruction with this particular tag has generated some data or not. As long as the data is not generated, this instruction will not go to the CPU. Let's say the CPU is somewhere here. Okay. It is just waiting in the queue, and it is not allowing others in this particular queue to go forward also. So maybe this instruction gets executed. Right, maybe this instruction, and then this one will move to the head of the queue, and after some time maybe this gets executed in the CPU. Once it gets executed in the CPU, it will write the value with its tag that, hey, I have completed execution, this is the tag. If anybody is listening to the bus, it's like it's like the train track that is going on. Everybody has put their ears on the train track, and they're listening whether there's a train or not, and something like that, right? So now everybody is listening to this train, this bus. and they'll see, okay, this instruction with this tag has executed some result. So this guy will get now activated because he's very happy that whatever he was searching for has come to Fusion, and he will fetch that value from the bus and give it back to the CPU and say, okay, now I'm ready to complete execution. So that's how it works. I mean, if it made any sense, if it doesn't make any sense, it's okay. But this is how, in a rough way, the Tomasulo's algorithm works. So there are these buses that are going around between CPUs, between queues. So everybody is writing to this. Maybe it might so happen that it's not even this simple. Actually, it's even much more complicated than this. Let's say there are these 3 queues, right? And there's this bus and there's the CPU, right? And maybe it so happens that this instruction here is dependent on this instruction and this instruction. So maybe this got executed, it fetched up the value, but it will still not go to the CPU and say I am complete, because it is still dependent on this instruction. And when this instruction also pushes some data onto the bus, this will fetch. And now, since both operands are complete, now it has everything that it wants to get executed for. It will go to the CPU and then push on this bus. Maybe this instruction here was dependent on this instruction, then that will get its value. So everybody is listening to the bus. That's how the modern day processors work. It's no longer the way that you think here it works. Again, there are many different designs. One is Tomasulo's design. The other is register file logic. Of course, there might be others also. There are like variations and variations to this. Yeah, if you are interested, if this makes you very interested, and if you find this very interesting, then hopefully you will take computer architecture in your 4th semester, sorry, 8th semester. Unfortunately, this time, none of the undergraduate students opted for computer architecture course. That's the sad part. So that's why I keep saying that once you come to the 4th year, you are no longer interested in these subjects. None of them, not even a single student registered for computer architecture. Okay. Is there anything else that you want to?
Sir, one small doubt.
Yeah.
Sir, what do you mean by an architecture is 32-bit?
So it's a 32-bit.
I know it just means that we can access 2 bar 32 different types of address in RAM.
So generally there is this bus that is, so whenever you say bus, there's a bus, right? So that's where you put out the address, that's where you copy the data back and all. So the bus width is 32-bit. That's what generally it means, but of course people can have different definitions. Generally it means the bus width is 32 bits.
Okay, sir. So it doesn't. So the word length doesn't depend upon this 32.
Yeah. So yeah, generally in some architectures the word length is equal to bus length, bus width.
Okay.
Okay. So if this is okay, then see, tomorrow we will be doing some more problems on cache. And then the next week, I think we have 3 classes, right? Next week I will have 3 classes. So then I will be starting a new topic called memory that takes some time for you to understand. It will take at least another 5-6 classes. I know that I don't have 5-6 classes. So I will again squeeze the next Thursday also for classes. So I know that I'm taking a lot of extra classes, but I somehow will be unhappy if I'm not completing those things. So we will push for a few more classes. Please bear with me. If you are stuck somewhere, you can always ask me or talk to the DS or anybody. They're always ready to help you. Yeah, but before I teach you virtual memory, I cannot say that the course is complete. So I will have to spend more classes. So next week we'll be spending more classes. This Sunday I will try to have a tutorial on pipelining, but I'm not sure whether I get time or not. I'll see if time permits. Definitely I will do it. Yeah, and the cache design, I repeat again, you can go through the design thing that I followed, like the way I actually followed. It was just a way to get you started. It's not a complete cache design. Even if you think on those lines and try to implement it, you can just write it there and give it to me. I will evaluate it. But give it. Okay, what is this? In previous instructions, suppose we are having cache and calling the instructions for first time. Can you please tell me how this pipelining will know? Previous instruction, we are having cache and calling the instruction for first time. I didn't get it. So are you saying that instructions, you are also simulating instruction cache. The instruction fetch is also missed. That's what you're saying, is it? So in your project, you don't have to worry about the instruction fetch. You can assume that the instruction fetch will immediately get the instruction fetch. You don't. Generally, you have to fetch the instructions from the cache, but let's assume that the instruction fetch is one cycle. You don't have to worry about the instruction fetch itself missing. Okay. Are there any other things that you want to discuss? Yeah, and the NASM simulator, I have put up a link. It's a very beautiful tutorial. Just try to spend some time. We'll again spend some time next week, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, so there are no questions. You have understood the architecture really well. Okay, if there are no questions, we will take the attendance. I don't know which two attendance to take. Today is 20th. Yeah, somebody asked for the textbooks. The Hennessy Patterson is the Patterson Hennessy is the best book according to me. Like they are the Turing Award winners also for their contribution to the RISC architecture. So they are like the stalwarts of computer architecture. That's a very good book. Of course, people also refer to a textbook called Hamasher. That's also very good. It's a blue color book. It's up to you. I mean, some people say that Hamasher is better than this, but I feel this is better than that. It's up to you. So there are two books, Hamasher and Patterson Hennessy. But if you are interested in more advanced stuff, there is Advanced Computer Architecture by same authors, but it's called Hennessy Patterson rather than Patterson Hennessy. So that's also a very good book. But that is not for your syllabus because it's computer architecture and not computer organization. So for computer organization, Patterson Hennessy should be enough. Yashwant? Yashwant? Bubba Rutik?
Present.
Vaibhav?
Yes, sir.
Pawan Sriram?
Yes, sir.
Pradeep Das? Sai Kritik? Nagendra Deepika? Anurag Reddy?
Yes, sir.
Suman P? Shrujan?
Present, sir.
Harish Pradyut?
Yes, sir.
Kala Shamim?
Present, sir.
Okay, so is there anything else that you want to discuss?